Heather here. So today we're going to be working on The Cold Never Bothered Me Anyway. It's a little image I did of a little girl who wanted to be Elsa. So I'm going to just kind of show you how I did all of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by placing all the stock. So first I'll actually show you where I got all the stock. Let me switch my screen here. So I got most of it from Adobe. This is the clouds and the mountain peak that I used from Adobe. Here's the cliff that I have her standing on, and the castle. I also used one of my own fog overlays, as well as a snowflake right here, this one here, from Pixel Squid. And I'll have all the links to everything just under the tutorial to all the stock. So if you wanted to go and get the stock and try doing this image yourself, then you can do so. All right, so this is what the final image will look like. So the very first thing I did was I worked on my girl. I'll just close this one up. So I actually worked on the little girl first. When I was editing her, all I did was brought her up into Liquify, and I liquefied her skirt a little bit to look like it was blowing in the wind. So that's what I did with that. And what we'll start with is we'll start by making a new file. So we're going to go up to File and New. And switch back my screen here. And this is the dimensions that I used. So I have the width at 6,000. I have the height at 3,999. So that's going to be the same dimensions as a 4x6. It's the same as a 4x6 ratio. And so I do most of my images in a 4x6 ratio, but you know, you can do whatever you feel like you want to use. So you can use like 8x10 ratio or whatever. So this is what I kind of use. I guess that's the equivalent of a 20x13 image size. So we'll go back to pixel, 300 resolution, RGB color. I put it in 8-bit just because sometimes with my actions and things that I use, it requires for the image to be in 8-bit. But if you prefer to work in 16-bit, that's great. 16-bit actually gives you a wider range of colors and basically image pixels to work with, and it's good to work in 16-bit. But like I said, I work in 8-bit just because my actions that I use require an 8-bit. Same with a lot of filters, like the filter window in Photoshop requires you to have an 8-bit image as well. So the background contents are transparent, and I always have it as don't manage color, and I'm going to rename it to be Elsa, Cold Never Bothered Me Tutorial. And we will create. Look at all these fun castles they have here in snow. It's awesome. All right, let's go back. So now I've got my tutorial one open. We're going to bring up the background. So this one, oh, where is it? This one. We're just gonna grab it and copy it. So I use my square marquee tool to select, and I'll hit Control C to copy. Bring it over to my Cold Never Bothered Me tutorial and hit Control V, and it'll paste it. And the next thing we want to do is right click and turn it into a smart object. And then we can hit Control T and we'll resize. So I'm just going to basically resize it so that the mountain is fitting in the image here. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my layer and I'm just going to copy it. And I'm going to take this bottom layer and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to bring it down. Oh, actually, Control Z. I want this one here. So I'm just going to actually click on here and I'm going to use my arrows on my keyboard to move it down so that I can actually select it here. There we go. And then we'll put a layer mask on this one above it and we're just going to paint out that line. My brush, I need a black brush. There we go. We'll just paint that out, blend it in a little bit. And anything that's kind of looking repetitive, you can just take your, make a new layer, so Shift Control Alt E, and you can just take your lasso tool here, sorry, your patch tool, and just patch out certain areas, just so it's not looking so repetitive. Maybe. There we go. All right. So the next piece of stock I want to put in is the castle. So we can close that now. We don't need that. Where is the little castle? Here we go. All right. So we'll select it. We're going to go to the little selection tool and hit select subject. It did a pretty good job. I'm just going to zoom in a bit here so I can see if it actually selected those little peaks. Pretty good, but let's get a small one and get that tip of that one there. There we go. Minus this out. All right, that's looking pretty good. So now I'll just go to select, modify, and I'm going to feather it just by 1 pixel. Oh, actually, I'm going to go Control Z to step back. I just realized this part right here is not selected. All right, there we go. Now I'll go select, modify, and feather. Okay, now I'm going to hit Control C, go back to this layer here, and Control V, and we've got our castle. We want to again right click, convert it to a smart object, Control T, and then you can resize. So I think I had it, just trying to figure out, I had it covering this piece here. I may have actually went and cloned the clouds underneath it. So I'm actually going to do that. Take my clone tool here. So figure out where you want the castle placed. I believe it was right about here. And I'm going to clone out just the edge of, or maybe this whole mountain here. So we'll select with, you hit Alt to select your clouds. maybe I'll select back here, and then I'll just start cloning. I want to add 100 and normal. Start cloning that mountain out. Nope. All right, so now when I have the castle, you won't be able to see it behind it. And we will actually blur this layer behind us here. So I want to go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And let's put it at maybe 9, and we're gonna blur the castle as well. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're gonna make that less of a blur because it's a little bit more in front. So let's make it maybe 5, and we'll hit OK. All right, so now we want to put a layer mask on this one, and I'm just gonna, with my brush at 100%, I'm just gonna try and blend in the base of this into the clouds. And I'm gonna just lower my opacity here and just go up a little bit more. There we go. All right, so this is looking really cyan, and I like the color of the background, but I'm not loving the color of the castle. So I'm just gonna put a color balance and clip it down to the castle. So right click and create a clipping mask. And I'm going to take some of that cyan out. So make it a little more red, maybe more blue. Okay, and then I'm also going to go into, I'm also going to make a, maybe a vibrance and clip that down, and actually take the saturation out. There we are. There, that's much better. All right, so the next thing that we need is, we can close out that castle. The next thing we need is the cliff. So again, I'm just going to click on my selection tool and hit select subject. And this obviously works really well with it being a white background. I'm going to go to select, modify, and feather again, 1%. Control C, go back to our image, Control V, and we'll just bring that rock into place. I believe it was about there. Okay. Now, as you can see, our background is really blue, but this rock here has a lot of yellow in it. So I could use the color balance again to adjust it. I'm actually going to go to selective color, and I'm going to go into the yellows, and I'm just going to basically take the yellow out. So as you can see, it's going out on the side of the rock there. And I'm also going to add more black to it. And then I think I went into blacks. And pretty sure I added some blue in there. Let's go back into the yellows here. I think I added some cyan. Just see. There we go. That's kind of why I was like, what's going on? It's not working. It's because I had it on the whole thing. I didn't clip it down to the actual stone. All right, now this should start working a little bit better here. I feel like the only thing is it needs a little more contrast, so we're gonna go into curves, and I'm actually gonna bring the highlights on the rock up. So right click that to the rock there, bring the highlights and the shadows down a bit here. There we go. So that's definitely looking a lot better there. All right, so now I may as well just add in, close that one. I'm just going to copy and paste this one in. Control C, Control V, and create, oh, sorry. Release clipping mask. We're going to convert it to a smart object. Control T. So kind of bring that up and enter, and we're going to put the blending mode from normal to screen, and we'll just kind of bring that down a little bit. Control T. I might just make it a bit bigger. Probably right about there. All right, so underneath the fog layer, we're gonna add in our subject. So close that up. And we will select subject. We're going to select and then modify feather at 1. Actually, Control Z. I'm gonna go select, modify feather, but I'm gonna put it at 0.5. Hit OK. Control C and Control V to paste her. And we'll just kind of drag her. Oh, Control Z. I'm gonna turn this layer off so I can select her and drag her into place. All right, so we can close her up. Now we want to add in our snowflake. Okay, and we're just going to turn the shadows off, make it a high resolution. And we'll just kind of move it into how we, direction-wise, how we want it. So it was something like that. And we'll just grab our move tool here. Oh. It keeps wanting to select that fog. Get the move tool, move that into place there. Control T. We're just gonna make it a little smaller. About there. We'll hit enter. And I'm going to do a curves layer and just clip it down to that snowflake. So right click, create clipping mask. And I just want to bring those midtones up a lot. It needs to be really bright. We'll just bring the shadows in a bit, create a little more depth with the inside there. Okay. And I'm also going to bring up the selected color again on this one and right click it to that snowflake. So create clipping mask, and I'm gonna go into the cyan and just kind of pull that cyan out of that snowflake there, and bring in some more blacks. Let's go into the blues. Whites. I bring it out. Okay. Let's just zoom into that snowflake there for a second. So I'm not loving how that brought out the blue lines so much in it. So I'm gonna go into this one again. You know, let me just see what it would look like if we did a black and white on that one. Just gonna clip it to that snowflake and play around with this a bit. Let's just kind of bring this whole layer down opacity wise. There we go. Now I'm gonna go into the curves and again bring the midtones way up. Oh, clip it to the snowflake and make it a little darker in the, just kind of create some contrast there. I'm still watching those blue lines there. I don't want them to get too noticeable. So about right there looks pretty good. There we go. So yeah, just putting that black and white really helped that. What we're gonna do is rename some of these layers because I like to be able to find my layers. So we'll rename this one here Castle. This one Background. And Cliff. Girl. We know that's the snowflake, and this one is fog. All right, so now I'm going to create a new layer just underneath the girl here. And we'll call this girl shadow. And we're going to turn this layer to multiply. Let's just turn the fog off for a second so we can kind of see what we're doing. And I'm going to get a different brush, just a round brush, and I'm going to change the dimensions of the brush. All right, and I'm going to select just a really dark color. We'll hit Alt, and we'll select like this dark blue here. And I'm going to put the opacity of my brush down to about 10-11% here. And I'm just going to start brushing it on underneath her. Oops. It's going to be darker, closer to her. And then we'll make the brush a bit bigger and just kind of fade it off a little bit here. All right, so now she's got a shadow. And we'll add the fog back in there. And we'll just kind of add a bit more. So you can see it through the fog. All right. So the next thing is I will make a new layer probably over top of her, and we'll call this girl hair. And we will look at my hair brushes. I got all of these from Brush Easy. Definitely a great website. I'll leave a link for Brush Easy just below this tutorial as well. And I'm gonna just find some hair. I'm gonna maybe start with, her hair's kind of straight with a little bit of curl at the end. So I'll start with this one. And we're just going to make it kind of smaller. I'm actually gonna put this layer behind her instead. And we'll zoom in so we can see what we're doing. And we're gonna select, so we're gonna hit Alt and we're gonna select parts of her hair. Oh, Control Z to step back. I need my brush to be at 100%. So just selecting bits of her hair. I'm going to start painting some in here. So maybe brighter part just to kind of blend. We'll go back. I'm gonna select that dark part of her hair again and just make that a bit bigger. All right, so now I'm gonna select a different one. And select the lighter part of her hair. And just kind of try and blend in some wisps of the light color. I'm gonna make a new layer for some of this. Maybe I'll use this one. All right, that's looking pretty good. We'll just make another new layer. Okay, so go back to our brush. I'm just going to group these 3 hair layers. Control G and girl hair 1. Oop. Gotta spell hair correctly. Now we'll go and put a layer over top of her, and I'm just going to keep selecting different pieces of hair. I'm just trying to find some more. Maybe these ones are probably the best since she's supposed to be kind of in the wind here. So I'll select this one, but I'm probably going to flip it. So I'll just select a color of her hair. Go Alts. Okay, and I'll paint it on. And then I'll say Control T. And we're going to flip horizontal. Okay. And we're just going to find kind of where we want to put it in her hair. Maybe more down here. Okay, we'll hit enter, and then we're just going to zoom back in there. And we're going to put a layer mask on it here and just get a normal brush. Where is my normal round brush? Soft round. Okay. And we're just going to try to blend that in a bit here. Okay, so the same thing, I'm going to put a layer mask on the girl, and I'm just going to try and blend her hair in with the layers I put on underneath. And another way that we can kind of try to blend some of the hair is we'll actually make another layer, and we'll call this painted hair. Alright, so now I'm just going to zoom in. make my brush super small. And we're going to select some of the highlighted, her highlighted hair. Okay, and now I'm just going to paint in some strands. Maybe make that a little bigger. So I'm just following the lines of the hair I've already painted in. And her hair. And we're just basically trying to blend the two together a bit more. Let's pick another color. All right, that's looking pretty blended in. So you could basically just keep going with it as much as you want to. And so the next thing that we want to do is add in the snowflakes. So let's just add on another paint layer. Painted snow. And we'll go into, I have a bunch of snowflake brushes. Again, I got all these from Brush Easy. So I'm just gonna find my snowflakes. Okay, so these are the Brush Easy snowflakes that I got. And so you just basically pick a brush that you like. Then you wanna go up to window and then brushes, and it'll bring up your brush settings. You want to go into brush settings. All right, so once you have your brush settings, you can adjust like the shape of your the way the brush is going to run across. So we don't want to keep them so uniform, so we'll just adjust the size. So some will be smaller than others. We also want to kind of change the shape, angle that it's going to go down, and let's scatter it as well. So we want to scatter them. All right. Oh, one other thing. Let's go back into the brush settings. Brush settings. All right, so one other thing we probably want to do is transfer. So we want to adjust the opacity a lot. So we want some to paint on really light and some to be on a bit darker as well. All right, so I'm going to start with the brushes just basically coming from her hand up to this one here. So just, oh, you know what? I have the wrong color. So I'm just going to hit Control Z to step back. We want it to be on a white brush. Maybe a little, like maybe a blue. So let's go to like one of these highlighted blue colors. And we'll just paint that on. Brush it around that one there. All right, so now we'll get a new one, maybe a different shape. And again, go into your brush settings. And we want to change the shape dynamic. So we want to change the size, the angle again, We want to scatter them, and we want transfer as well. So let's do this transfer a little lighter. Okay, and we'll just make it pretty small to start from her hand and make them a little bit bigger as we get up. Maybe we'll keep them pretty small actually. All right. And the next thing we'll do, maybe we'll do one more. So let's pick another shape, maybe this little star shape here. Go into your brush settings. Again, we'll adjust the size jitter, angle jitter. We'll scatter them and transfer and make it smaller. They're kind of going on pink. I'm just gonna go step back here. Let me check my brush settings here. I have the color dynamics on, so we want to turn that off. All right, we'll go back. So start pretty small near her hand and get bigger as we go up. All right, so I think that's enough snowflakes. And then what we're gonna do in behind our snowflake here, what was this one? Hair, okay. I'm going to group these. Control G, hair 2. All right, so make a new layer, and we're going to actually, let's make a gradient layer, and we're gonna make it radial. We're gonna make it fairly small, and we're just gonna move it in behind our snowflake here. Let's maybe change the color to an even lighter blue, and we'll get rid of that one. And we'll hit OK on that. I'm just gonna move it again. There we go. And hit OK, and we're just gonna turn the opacity down a little bit. All right. So that looks good. We'll call that Snowflake Glow. All right. This is the painted snowflakes. So we could actually drag that down under the fog. And then I'm gonna bring over one of my snowflake overlays as well. So let me just quickly find it here. Okay, let's bring over this one. And we'll just hit enter. Actually, Control T. And looks like it's not quite the right size. And we'll put that to screen. And obviously turn the opacity down a little bit. We'll put a layer mask on this, and at 100% on our brush, and it needs to be a normal round brush. At 100%, we're gonna paint it off her skin, or her face, and then we'll just lower the opacity here, and just kind of on her, just a little less of that snow. All right. And then what we want to do now is just double check that everything is looking the way that you like it. And then if it is, then you can probably flatten the layers now. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flatten it. Flatten image. And I'm just going to make 2 curved layers. So we'll make one, bring the midtones down. Call this layer burn. And I'm going to invert this layer mask. So Control I to invert. And a second one, we'll bring the midtones up. And we'll call this one dodge. And again, invert it. Control I to invert. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna now just dodge and burn the highlights and shadows on her. So with my white round brush on the burn layer, I'm going to run it over all of her like shadows in her dress. Maybe even under her dress here. Now I'm going pretty quick, but if you want to take your time with it, that's, you know, a good thing to do. All right, and even in her little face, her features here in her face, it's good to go over. I'm going to zoom in and really just go over everything here, like okay, and the same with the highlights. So that's before and that's after. All right, so I believe that this is a done image, so I'm going to flatten it, and then I'm actually going to play my sharpen action, probably the details sharpen action, because I don't really want to sharpen the background or anything. I'm just going to sharpen certain details And most of the time that's just her features, like her eyes and nose. Oh, yeah, with a white brush, just sharpen up those little details. Maybe that one. All right. And then just to finish it off, I'll make one more new layer. So I hit Shift Control Alt E, and I'm just going to run a noise filter. Add noise. Usually I only add noise at about 1 or 2%, so I'll hit OK on that. And we'll just flatten that and then save it. And that is done. So this is a much shorter tutorial than the last one I put in, but still a lot of fun to work with. I love playing with the snowflake brushes, so much fun. So I hope you have a really good time trying this tutorial out, and that it was helpful for you and gave you some good tips. So we will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you.